Testing, testing. Shalom chaverim. Last week I was smart and I wrote this on the board and it says Hebrew from day one. That's what I call this class. And we're at lesson 5 today, which I guess it says over there if you can read that in little letters. Lesson 5. This is a 6-week class, a 6-lesson class, so we have this week and next week. This is actually the end of the first day. We're going to get to the end of the first day of the creation story. So you're going to be able to read every letter in the first day of creation story by the end of today, which is really cool. And there are 7 letters after that. And we will find all of those letters in the Decalogue in Exodus. That's where we're going to find them. But you will have, this is all of it, and you'll be able to get that. And I've got copies to hand you today, but it's also on the website. We're going to look at the usual. Sorry, let's do this. Okay. Oh, that's not good. Sorry. Helene, hi. She just wrote us a letter. I don't know how to turn that off while we're doing this. All right, so who wants to lead the Aleph Bet song? Anybody want to do it for me, or you want me to do it? You know what? I realize I've got the microphone, so I'm going to have to do it. Maybe next time we'll set it up so that we've got more microphones. You did it, yeah. All right, so we're going to do this. I want to show you that on my chart I have 2 Aleph Bet lists. This is the one that we do for the song, and this one says it's the complete Aleph Bet. We talked about this at Camp Chai this morning. How many letters are there in the English alphabet? 26. How many letters are in the Hebrew Aleph Bet? There's officially 22. It's officially 22, but if you count these letters, there's more than 22 here. Because when we count the letters, then Aleph, Bet, Vet. Bet and Vet are the same letter. They're not considered different letters. Bet and Vet, you'll notice the only difference between these two is that this one has the dagation and that one doesn't. And that's the same difference between Kaf and Chaf. This one has a dagation, that one doesn't. And the same difference between Pe and Fe. This one has a dagation, that one doesn't. But these are both really the Bet. This is just a Bet with a dagation, a Bet without a dagation. And the difference is going to be, we'll talk about it one day, but probably not within the 6 weeks of this beginning class. It has to do with essentially, among other things, mostly about where it is it's mostly where it is in the word. So if a word or a syllable starts with the letter Bet, it's going to have a B. And if the end of the syllable, if it's at the end of a syllable, it's going to be a V. We'll talk about that more. It's not practical to worry about it because you don't know any words. So until you know words, it's not practical to know grammar. But I wanted to, if you ever looked up and you said, oh, I thought there was only 22 letters in the Aleph Bet. How come this has more? And this has a lot more because this has not just a Bet-Vet difference, but once you get to the final letters, you see Kaf, Chaf, and a final Chaf, and a Mem and a final Mem, and a Nun and a final Nun, and a Pe and a final Fe, and a Tzadi and a final Tzadi. So you're going to get up to 32 letters here, not just 22. It makes a lot of sense in a beginning language class, if you're trying to learn how to read, to think of the Bet and the Vet, for example, as different letters. Every time you see that, it's really okay for you to think of it as a Vet. But the reality is there's no such letter Vet. There's really a letter Bet with a dot and without the dot. It's not going to hurt you in any way to think of the fact that there's always a Vet, but it's not a separate letter. So when we're learning these, for example, we've talked about the fact that every letter has a numerical value. So the Aleph is 1, and the Bet is 2, and the Vet is 2, because it's the same letter. That's when it becomes helpful. I mean, it's really okay for you to think of this as its own consonant, but remember somewhere in the back of your head it kind of isn't. That's just, we're getting to know enough of the letters now, so I wanted to do that. All right, so we're going to repeat after me. Are you going to watch? Ready? Aleph, Bet, Vet. Aleph, Bet, Vet. Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet. Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet. Yud, Kaf, Chaf. Yud, Kaf, Chaf. Lamed, Mem, Nun. Lamed, Mem, Nun. Samech, Ayin, Pe, Fe. Samech, Ayin, Pe, Fe. Tzadi, Kuf, Resh. Tzadi, Kuf, Resh. Shin, Sin. tav, ba ba da ba dum. Shin, sin, tav, ba ba da ba dum. That's good. Now let's do some aerobics. So if you are a line underneath a consonant, you sound like ah. And if you're stretching like this in this kind of line, you sound like ah. And if you're one little dot, you say e. And if you're a dot with a yud, you're going to sound like ouch, e. If you're three dots like this, like the bowling ball I call it, it's an eh, the fed up vowel. If you're two dots like this, it's eh. If you're three dots zooming down the tube, it sounds like ooh. And if you are Mr. Vav up at bat and the pitcher pitches the ball into your stomach, you say ooh. But if you're Mr. Vav up at bat and the pitcher pitches it over your head, you say oh. And then if you're the saddest, most misunderstood vowel, you're going to be an oh. And then we go below the line. Below the line is the absence of vowel sounds. So we have a shva, which can either be a resting shva, where it sounds like this, silent, or a moving shva, where it sounds like this. Slicha. Excuse me, sounds like I burped. I didn't. And then we have the auxiliary vowels, the chataf vowels. So this one is chataf patach, when we have a patach and we put it there and it sounds like ah. And this one is essentially a moving shva, which you see over here, but it's attached to a segol so you can pronounce something and it sounds like eh. And then you have a moving shva and a kamatz and it's going to sound like oh. Those are our vowels. Last time we learned some diphthongs too, but I'm not going to worry about that today. What we're going to do today is we're going to learn the last of the consonants from the day one part. So in our never-ending saga of what happened on the first day of creation, I'm coming back over here. We're going to look on the board, on the screen. We're in lesson 5, and we have, this is how far we've come so far. We're going to say, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. That's the first sentence. Second sentence, we've learned all the letters. Ve'haaretz hayata tohu vavohu v'choshech al panei tahom. That's very deep. V'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim. So let's take a look at that. Sorry. Bereshit. We're letting people say that that's in the beginning. But it could also be at the first moment or with primal stuff. God created da-da-da-da, the skies, and da-da-da-da, the land. And the land, she was void and unformed, and choshech, and darkness, is on the face of the deep. And the spirit, Veruach Elohim, and the spirit of God, or the wind of God, or the breath of God, mirachefet, it's hovering, al panei hamayim, on the face of the water. Vayomer Elohim, and God said, Hior, be light, Vayior, and light was. Vayar Elohim, and God saw et haor, God saw the light. And now we come to our new letters, because we didn't know this next letter at all. So we're going to learn that one. It's not hard at this point, now that we've been through the Aleph Bet song so many times, it's not hard for us to figure out what these might be. So I'm going to draw my lines. We've got, this is about how big it's going to be. And we've got, I want you to cup your hand like this. Cup your hand. So we've got a curve here, so this is curved. And then we're going to put a cough drop in the middle of this. So it's curved with a cough drop, and it sounds like curved with a cough drop. And you see how my hand is curved? My hand is a little bit even more curvy than the letter that I drew. But the word in Hebrew, the name of this letter is kaf, and the palm of my hand is a kaf. And a spoon, like a soup spoon, is a kaf. So all those things, we're getting that curve, the curve of the cough, and then you put the cough drop in it, and it sounds like k, k. So we can do this if we come down here. The letter kaf, it's curved like a cupped palm. It represents the number 20. And we can practice these if we want. Come on. Okay. So we've got, what is this? Ka, ke, ki. And that's the word that we see at the beginning of our phrase here. Ki means because or that. And then it's ki, ko, ku, and k. And let's take a look at these words. How do I say all or every? This is a pretty common word. Let's move over. And you'll notice that when I did this on the word processor, I've got this as the kamatz katan, as the misunderstood version of the kamatz. It's an O. The word for all rhymes with all, just about. It's kol. Kol. Kol means all or every. So that's kol. And then, how do I say a dog in Hebrew? So look at the vowel. We've got a curved cough with a cough drop, so that's k. And then this vowel is so it's ke. And then this is the tallest letter with the L at the top, so it sounds like l. And it's got another And this is that letter vet that I just told you doesn't really exist, but we're going to call it letter vet anyway. So that is kelev. And I've told you a few times, and we've seen a bunch of words, and it's not critical that you remember it, but it may help somewhere in the back of your mind. If I say it enough times, it may click. That if you have two es together, then the accent's always going to be on the first e. It's called a segolate noun or a segolate pattern because this is a segol and this is a segol. So when you have a segolate pattern, one of the things that will always happen is the first syllable is the one that's going to be accented. Most of the time in Hebrew, the last syllable is accented, but not when you have this pattern. So a dog is a kelev. Kelev is a dog. Kelev. For those of you who are into Torah learning, there were two scouts that got sent by Moses into the promised land who said, "Oh, we can do this, God. We can do this, people. We can do this, Moses." But the rest of the 10 other scouts said, "Oh, those guys are too big and they're kind of scaring us. We feel like grasshoppers in their eyes." What were the name of the two scouts? One was Joshua, Yehoshua, and the other was Caleb. This is the same letters that you use for spelling Caleb, the same letters that you use for spelling dog. But his name was this, Kalev. Kalev. And the word Kalev in Hebrew means, the word lev means heart, and Kalev can mean like a heart. It means sincere. So he was a sincere guy. Kalev is a good name, except sometimes then when you see it without the vowels, because you know in Israel they write almost everything without vowels. So if we took these vowels away, we would take that away. We would actually also take that away. And you would look at that and you would say, well, is your name Kalev, like Frank, which means sincere, or is it Kelev? Did your mom call you a dog? That wasn't nice. But it's Kalev and dog are the same letters. I guess dogs are often sincere, right? How often do dogs lie to you? I mean, seriously. All right. Right, never. All right, so this one means already. Let's see if we could do this. We have a k with a moving shva, so it sounds like k all together. We have that same v, and then an a, kva, and then we've got a rounded resh, so it's kvar. Kvar means already. I already fed the kelev. I already fed the dog. I kvar fed the dog, kelev. All right, so we've got those, and then we come back, we get to our next letter. The next letter, I like this letter. This is one that everybody forgets. I don't know why. I had a horrible experience one time where I forgot this letter. I was chanting Torah at a congregation where I was the lay rabbi, and there were really famous people in my service. And I had trained this kid for bar mitzvah, and he was reading some of the Torah, and I was supposed to read some of the Torah, and I wasn't used to chanting Torah, and I was a nervous wreck. And I got up there, and there's this one letter in the middle of this sentence, and the letter was this. And I looked at it, and I blanked, totally blanked. It was terrible. And I know a lot of people that blank on that letter, but you shouldn't blank on that letter. I'm going to show you what it is. This one I call a tear at the top tet. The tear at the top tet. You'll notice that in our software, it looks kind of almost rounder, something like that. But it's still a tear at the top. The key thing is remembering that there's a tear at the top. Some people, for some reason, confuse this with a mem. Does that look anything like a mem? No. But the mem has a thing on the top like that. But when I taught you the mem, I said, I want you to remember that there's a bottom missing. And this one has a tear at the top. So if you get to a letter and you look at it and you say, I don't know, is that a tet or is it a mem? Remember that if the tear is at the top, it's a t, it's a tet. And we had talked about the fact that the first week we had already learned a tav, and which looks like this. I'm going to do a tav like this. That's attached at the top with a toe at the bottom left. And we talked about the fact that in Hebrew, we don't need two of the same letter. So they both sound like T. And in English, there's only one kind of T sound. So they're both going to sound like that for those of us who speak English. But in Israel, you may make a distinction by, try it like this. The tav is more like you take your tongue and you splat it on the roof of your mouth. T. This big fat tongue at the top of your mouth. The tet is more like what I call the dainty t, where you take the tip of your tongue and you put it behind your teeth, and you get a dainty tet. So this is the tet. And this is a tav, a thicker one. Can you hear the difference between t and t? And if you can, then you're welcome to say the two of them. Many people can't, and so it doesn't matter which t you say, because it's going to be the same for you no matter what. So you're welcome to pronounce it at whatever your T is in your mouth, the T sound is in your mouth. And we're going to practice the tet. And we're going to do it like this. Ready? Ta, ta, te, te, ti, ti. Yes, she said that. She didn't want to say that, but she said it. To, to, tu, tu, and t. This is actually a very fancy tet. And we've got a couple of words. One of the words that I want to give you is a word that we learned. It went too big. There it is. Let's come here. Get bigger. Come down. This word, which means good in Hebrew, labriut. This word is good. And it's a t with the o and the vet, so it sounds like tov. Tov is how you say good. And you're doing a very good job. Tov ma'od, you're doing a very good job. So we're going to see where that comes from. In the very first day of exactly, Tov Ma'od, it's the very first day of the creation story. We're going to see the word Tov. But let's look at this one. This is one of my favorite tet words. Because this one is, you have a t, tear at the top tet, with the E vowel. And then we have a p with a pill in it, the profile with the pill. And then ah, and the silent hey at the end, where your whole hanging here, hey, and it gets silent at the end, and the word is tipa, tipa. And I like the word tipa because because when I look at the letter tet, that's what I think of. I think of this. I think of a drip coming from the middle. Tipa, tipa, tipa. And I just imagine this dripping coming from the middle of this thing. When I was in Israel, I was on a kibbutz in the south, where it's very hot and it's almost like a desert. It's called the Arava, which is the prairie, and it was a lot like desert. It was so much like desert that instead of squirrels, we had camels that came through. I'm not kidding. Every once in a while, a camel would just come running, just whatever. And so there's like just almost dust instead of even, it wasn't dirt, it was sand. And under the sand, about this far under the sand, was rock. And we tried to make that desert bloom. And the way we did it was Israel invented this drip irrigation system. So the way that works is they take, they dig a hole that's long paths like this, and they're going to dig this hole, long path like this. And then they're going to take a hose, and they're going to stick a hose in the middle of that. And this hose is specially designed to drip strategically. Depending on what the crop is, they'll determine how far apart the holes are and how big the holes are. So it'll tell you how much it has to water. And then you plant your seeds. And depending on what the crop is, it'll tell you how far apart they have to go. Some on this side and some on this side, all the way across, all the way down to the end. And then you take this giant piece of plastic, and the plastic goes over here, way beyond the edge of that dugout. And then you put dirt on this to hold that plastic down. And then you wait. And every morning, you would turn on your hose for just a little while, and you'd water the seeds. And what happens is, in the desert, which was hot like here, well, here it's a little more humid. There it was hot and dry. Normally, if you had one of these sprinklers, which a lot of people do, I saw these in Texas last week too, that they do these sprinklers like this. In this heat, a sprinkler like that, it evaporates before it even hits the ground. And so it wasn't practical. But if you do this, then it would evaporate. But it hits the plastic and rains back down again. So it maintains the moisture in there. And then at some point, the little things we planted would turn into little plants. And once the little plants, little heads, hit the bottom of the plastic, we would have this emergency on the kibbutz. Whatever job you had on the kibbutz, you had to emergency go to the field, and you took a little razor blade, and you make a little X right over where the little plant is. And then the plant, it's a teeny, teeny X, but the plant will pop its root and its kind of trunk, the stem of the plant, only the stem would pop out of there. And then the head would get bigger and bigger. And we had tomatoes, we had afganiot, those are tomatoes, or malafafonim, which are cucumbers, and we had batzal, which is onions, and whatever it was, it had big plants on the top of it, but only the stem was peeking out. So the bottom still had an irrigation system, kind of like its own built-in greenhouse, where they would water it, and it would just rain down. And it didn't lose any of the water that way. And it was awesome, and we made the desert bloom. And that technology, which they designed at the Ben Gurion University, they designed it down there. They're using it all over the world where there's problems with water and heat. And it's a cool thing. But that's called the drip irrigation system. And the hoses, those special hoses, it's called the taf-tufot system, the taf-tufot, the drip, drip, drip system, taf-tufot system. I love that word, tipa. That's a dripping. And then we go to this one. I like this because of what it is. Anybody hungry? All right, so watch. If you're hungry, sometimes you like to go to this place. So look what I did here. I put, this one is a mountain with about a missing and a missile. That's the missile mountain mem. You notice how there's about a missing with an E underneath it, and this is a tear at the top tet. When I put those two together, you see they really don't look alike, but let me just tell you, sometimes when you see them by themselves, you look at it and say, wait a second, which one is that? Hopefully you will never get them confused after you've seen them like this. So this is me, and then this is t with a silent schwa underneath it, so that's meat, and then we have a bar on the bottom, a base that goes beyond, and a ball in the belly, it's a bet, with an ah underneath it. And at the end, we have a none of the above letter, which is the chet. So this word is mitbach, mitbach. That is the kitchen. And if you are a tabach, then you'd be the cook in the kitchen, in the mitbach. A tabach in the mitbach. All of the Semitic languages, including Hebrew, are typically based on 3 root letter word systems. So once you know the 3 root letters of a word, you can usually kind of guess what other words are. So if I tell you that someone is a tabach, then you say, oh, I know, has to do with a mitbach, has to do with the kitchen, or vice versa. And a lot of words like that. This is a good word. I like this one. So this one is a tear at the top tet with an ah, and then there's an ayin, which is essentially silent or a voiced glottal stop with an ah, and a marshmallow mem. And this is another situation where the first syllable is going to be accented. Ta'am. Ta'am is taste. So if you say, we just learned the word tov, adjectives in Hebrew always follow the noun. So if you want to say, that tastes good, it's a good tasting thing, you would say, ta'am tov. Ta'am tov. It's good tasting. Yeah, that's good. In Italian, you do this. Ta'am tov. In French, you do this. In English, you do. American. So you'd say that's good tasting stuff. So now we've got zhoob. This one surprises me. We hadn't learned it yet because it's really high up on the ladder of Aleph, Bet, Vet, Gimel. And it's a dalet. But let's take a look at why it's a dalet. What makes it very dalet-y? Well, the word in Hebrew for door is delet. And this one is going to look a little bit like other things you've seen. So here's our lines. And don't even do that, because then it's going to confuse you. So watch what we do. We say, that's not a good thing. We say it's got a dingle-dangle doohickey right here. You see how it dingles and dangles right off the end here? It's got a dingle-dangle doohickey right there. So the dalet is the dalet because it's got a dingle-dangle doohickey. I'm going to take another one so you can see it better. And I'm going to show you how, it's not hard to imagine that this could be a door, or put the door with a doorknob somewhere else. And here's your hinge. It's a delet, a door. That's where the dalet came from. But the dalet has the dingle-dangle doohickey on the end, and you see it over here. It reminds us of a door, and that's what it come from. So let's take a look at our dalets. Let's practice a little bit. So we have da, da. The one we're going to see is de, which is why it's really giant here. And here's another de, and d, and d. And this is what Homer Simpson says, do. And another one, do. And this one is maybe what you ask a question, do. And this one is do, and you'll notice that I didn't say them together like I did with the T's, because I didn't want to do that again. And then we have d. Yeah, I already warned you. I did my disclaimer that you see that all I'm doing is taking every single consonant with every single vowel. And sometimes that combination says words that make us giggle. And this is one of those. So, whoop, what happened here? Go away. Go away. Are you not going to go away? No. Go away. Okay. I may have to trick you into going away. Go there, and then come back. It's not tricked. How did I get this thing to pop up? I didn't even want it to pop up. Nope, that's there. I don't want to learn more. I want you to go away. I may come back and come back in. That'll trick them into coming back. Go and come back. Lesson 5. All right. We get to all of the words that we need for my dalet. I am doing that. Boy, it's giving me a lot of information here that I don't want. All right, here's my, it's back again. Go away. Oh, that's even worse. All right, I don't care. I'll be here. I'll do it without you. Yeah, no, this. Ta-da. That was a good thing, though. The larger thing was what gave me the idea. All right, so this is a really cool word because this word means a word or a thing. And a word or a thing, isn't it kind of cool that the same word means a thing? Like if you say, this thing is a, and it's the same word for the thing or the word. All right, so this one is, we've got a dingle-dangle doohickey, and you'll notice there's a negation there. That's okay. It's not going to change the pronunciation now. It used to. Long ago, every time you saw a dagation, a dalet, it sounded like duh. And when you didn't see a dagation, a dalet, it sounded like the. And you'd have a similar kind of combination like you did with bet and vet and kaf and chaf and pe and fe. You'd have d and the, but we don't anymore. So now every time you see a dalet with or without a dagesh, everybody I know is going to say d. And this is d with an a, and this is vet with an a, and this is a resh. So this word is davar. We're going to have the accent on the last syllable, davar. So you're going to say davar as a word or thing. I said this one a bunch of times as we were teaching it. I want you to notice we've got the dingle-dangle doohick at the beginning. It has a doorknob in it. It's got an underneath it. We have a lamed and an and a attached at the top with a toe at the bottom left, tav. So this is delet. And since it's an again, it's a segolet, so the accent's going to be on the first syllable, delet. And that's a door. We talked about door because we talked about the fact that the dalet comes from door. This is how we say slaves or servants. We have an ayin, which is essentially silent. It's a voiced glottal stop. We have a chataf patach, which is an ah. It's a moving shva that's going to sound like ah. We have a vet with an ah underneath it. And here's our dingle dangle doohickey dalet with the e vowel and then a marshmallow mem. So we have avadim. Avadim hayinu, hayinu. We were slaves, avadim. We were avadim. The 3 root letters, by the way, for avadim are ayin, vet, dalet. And you're going to see those 3 root letters, the ones that are slave or servant, in things like oved means work, or avodah means work or worship, or a bunch of stuff. Let's see, how are we now? We got one more. This one, all right, this one, did we do? Yeah. I'm going to leave that there so you can see this in proportion, because this one, we already know what a nun looks like. A nun looks like this, and it's half the size of the normal letters. It's narrow. This is a final nun, so it's half the size, and it goes below the line. It's narrow and goes below the line. So that's a final nun, which we're saying nun sofit, which means a final nun sofit. Narrow nose nun, this is the shape that it takes only at the end of a word. And because it's at the end of the word, when we practice it, I put an aleph pretending that that's the beginning of the word. So we're going to sound it out like this. An, en, and in, on, and then un. And we don't have a shva practicing because you're not going to have a shva at the end of the word. Once the word is over, it's over. You don't need a shva to show that it's silent underneath there. So some common words. This is one we learned earlier today. In Hebrew, the way to say yes, we take this curved letter with the cough drop in it. It's a k, and then and the final nun. Can. That means yes, can. And lo is no. Can. This is how you say there isn't or there aren't. We have an aleph, which is silent, and then the with a yud, which is a diphthong. We learned that last time. So with a yud is going to sound like a. So the silent with the a, and then a final nun is ein. Ein means there isn't or there aren't. Ein means there isn't or there aren't. So if I want to say, what isn't? What don't we have here? What don't we have here? So if we say, ein shalom ba'Yisrael, there's no peace in Israel. That makes me sad, but we can say that. Ein shalom, there's no peace. This word is the word for I. And we talked about it when we taught the first letter of this word, because the name of the letter is this word. The name of the letter is the word for I. So this is an ayin with an ah, so it's silent-ish. It's a voiced glottal stop with an ah. And then we have a yud with a chirik, which is yi, ayi, and then the final nun, ayin. So this one's going to be the accents on the first syllable again. Anytime you see words with an ah, e pattern, that's another time where the accent's always going to be on the first syllable. So we have 2 kinds of things that we know. The accent's always on the first syllable for and the accent's always on the first syllable for a. And it's important, especially if there's a yud in here, that's very common, that you're going to have an aye, like ayin, which is I, and bayit, which is house, and yayin, which is wine. There's a lot of words that have that pattern, and when it does, it's not just about the accent. The other things that are going to follow the pattern are like, how do you make it into a plural and things like that. But that's how you say an I. This is the land that in English we often call it, how do you say that in English? Canaan? Yeah, but it's not Canaan. It's a bad transliteration. This is kaf. It's a curved with a cough drop, and a moving shva is k. And then you have a narrow nose nun with an ah, so that's kana. And then you have a silent or a voice glottal stop, ayin, with another ah, so you have kana'ah. And then you have your final nun, Kana'an. Kana'an is Canaan. Kana'an is Canaan. It's not really supposed to have been Canaan. There's no A at the beginning of that anywhere. And then we have, I think, one more letter to this one. And the one letter is this. This is my monkey letter. Monkey letter, yeah. This is the one letter in the alphabet that goes below the line but is not a final letter. So we make it by making something like a resh and then a line going below it. And something else goes over. So that's the kuf. And why did I call it a monkey letter? Because the word for monkey is kof. So I kind of see a monkey bending over and a long tail. I'm not a good enough artist to make that happen for you. But somebody once said recently that it reminds them of a key. Does it look like a key? It's a kuf, is a key. I like to think of the kuf as a letter Q instead of a letter K. That's why saying key bothers me a little bit, because that's a K. Here we've had a kaf and we've had a kuf, and they're not, and I've said this before, when we had the tav and the tav, they're not the same. The vet and the vav, they're not the same. You're welcome to say them the same way. If you want to say both the kuf and the kaf is a K, that's okay. But they're not the same. So think about this in your mouth. Say king and say queen. Ignore the fact that queen has a U afterwards. Think about how king and queen sound in your mouth, where you make those sounds. K, 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 k. So the kuf comes from further back in your mouth. The Q is from further back in your mouth. And it's not going to sound exactly the same if you were to pronounce them differently. You're welcome to. You're welcome to say them always as a K. But kuf and kaf don't necessarily, they weren't originally sounding the same, but they will here. So the kof is a monkey. The kuf is this sound. Let's practice the kuf. We've got ka, ka, ke, ke, whoop, ki, ko, ko. Somebody here is cheating there. She's not even looking at the words and saying them. Ku, and k. And that means we've got a whole bunch. We've got a bunch of big ones. Look at that. We've got 3 big ones. That means we're going to see 3 different places where that's coming in our sentence. So we have the word for a sound or a voice is this word. Kol, kol. We saw, these are kind of, we call them homonyms or homophones. We saw this word when we were practicing the kafs. Kol means all or every. And now we're seeing this one, which has a different vowel and a different consonant at the beginning. We have kol, which is a voice. We have kol, which is all or every. And you'll be able to tell the difference. It's not a problem. But those are 2 words that sound almost the same. And you may have heard the expression kol shofar, the sound of a shofar. Or there's a wonderful song we like to sing at weddings where we talk about, yet it will be heard, od yishama, and you say, kol sason ve'kol simcha, kol chatan ve'kol chala. So that means the voice of joy and the voice of gladness and the voice of the bride and the voice of a groom. And this word is a word that I think you've heard before. This word is holy. And we have a kuf with an a dingle-dangle doohickey, and an o, kado, and then you have the shin, kadosh. So kadosh means holy, very good. Kadosh is holy. And the 3 root letters for kadosh are the kuf, the dalet, and the shin. And so you get words like kiddush, which is what you say when you're saying your wine blessing at the beginning of Shabbat usually. Or you have words like the kaddish, the kaddish, the prayer that you say at the end of a service. Sometimes it comes in a few times in the service, but most people think of the mourner's kaddish. Yid Gadal Yid Kadash. Kadash is kadosh is holy. I like to think of holy as being not so much about something better, but something different, something set apart. And so then we have one other word, which is not a good one to think about, but it does have the letters we know already. And how do we say grave in Hebrew, like what you bury something in, is kuf with an ke, and a vet with an ve, and a rounded resh. So you have kever. You okay, dude? That carpet is slippery. Kever. Kever is a grave. And we have another segolate where you have an together. And it's not like you have to memorize these words, but that's a whole bunch of words you know. And then we have learned all of day 1. I have copies. Would you be so kind as to hand those out? Because that's something we're going to be able to read now. We're going to be able to read all of day 1 if you want. The version that I'm handing out for you right now is the colorized version. Let's see if I can pull that up. Here is day 1 colored in a PDF. And we're going to say, make it big. This is what okay, you can go away, thank you. So this is what I did. So what you have here, if you look at the bottom, it tells you that each of these colors represents a different letter, a different lesson when we learn the letters. But this, so it's filled with colors because, so that you remember when you learned it. And you can go back and find it. And it's going crazy. Look at this. All right, that's going to have to be good enough for now. But we should be able to read all of this. So we read, Bereshit bara. In the beginning God created. No, in the beginning he created. And then we say, Elohim et hashamayim. God, the skies. This is by lessons. So the third lesson we learned, ve'et haaretz, and the land. Ve'haaretz hayata tohu vavohu v'choshech, and the land was void and unformed, and darkness, choshech. Lesson 4 we learned, al panei tehom, was on the face of the deep. Ve'ruach Elohim, and the spirit or the breath or the wind of God, merachefet, is hovering, al panei hamayim, on the face of the waters. And then continuing in lesson 4 we learned, Vayomer Elohim, and God said, Hior, be light. Vayhior, and light was. We get to this lesson and we learned how to read. Let's make this bigger and get through this a little bit easier. So you're seeing some of these things are also like the squiggly, that's a trope mark, that's not vowels. We have Vayar, means and he saw. Elohim, and God saw. Et ha-or, and God saw the light. Whoa, that was cool. Ki tov. Ki tov. Ki tov means because it's good, or that it's good. And God saw the light, that it's good. I think that if you could see, if there was nothing at all and you can finally see light, that's good. It's good to see. You can't see without the light. And then it says, and this is a concept that absolutely blows my mind. It says, Va yavdel, Va yavdel, Elohim, and God separated, distinguished, separated. What did God separate? Bain haor, between the light, uvein, and between hachoshech, the darkness. So a couple things. If you have bain, a between, there's two ways of using that word. If, let's say, I am walking in the middle of a crowd, then I could just be walking ben ha'anashim, between the people, let's say. But if I'm walking between a rock and a hard place, then in Hebrew I have to say ben the rock, uven the hard place. I have to say between the rock and between the hard place. I have to use both of them. So what's happening here is it says God saw the light, ki tov, because it's good. And then God separated between the light and between the darkness. That blows my mind. If I have a room, and it's a dark room, and I turn on the light, I don't have to separate between the light and the darkness. Between the light and the darkness, there's nothing. There's either light or darkness. I don't have a moment where I have to say, all right, you get to this side and you get to that side. I think of it like this, and I don't know how you see it. Other people have described it other ways. Have you ever made chocolate milk? Have you ever made really good chocolate milk by using not a powder, although it might work with a powder, but I imagine it with a liquid, a syrup. Okay, you make syrup. So you take your syrup and you do swirlies, right? Okay, so let's say you do swirlies, and you did a lot of swirlies because you wanted a lot of chocolate. And then you stir it up, and now it becomes blended together. It's like a brown, okay? What if I did that backwards? Then I would be separating between the light and the darkness. That's what I imagine happened here. That there was light and darkness, there was darkness, and then there was light. And when there was light, they kind of somehow blended together. And then somehow God had to separate them out. Yes, sir.
So you are saying that God was in darkness.
I'm saying that there was darkness.
God was in darkness, and then he created light.
I'm not saying that God, so the question was God in the darkness, and then God created light? And I'm saying that the world was in darkness. I don't know what God was in. So the situation for the world was dark, and God made light.
But isn't God radiant light?
Is God radiant light? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what it was there. The awesome part of this story, it was 6 days before we got there. We don't know what it was like. And just the concept, and this concept alone of trying to separate dark from light, blows my mind enough to say, I don't know what it was like. I don't know, was God in darkness? Was everything in darkness and God was in darkness? Or was God emanating some kind of light? Well, then why did what did it mean that God created the light? Why couldn't God have created darkness? Or is darkness a nothing? I love that we're asking these questions. Yeah, and another question. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're about to find out. That's a really good question. What is a day? So we're about to get there. So first, God creates light. God says, be light, and light was. And then God somehow separates light from darkness. We know that. And so now that they're separated, now that there's a distinguished light from a distinguished darkness, now what happens is this. This is kind of cool. And it says, over here, Vayikra Elohim, and God called Laor, to the light, Yom. Say that, Yom. So God called to the light, Yom. So God's looking at the light and God calls Yom. And that's how God names things, by calling to it. It's the same in other languages. Like if you say, in my dialogue that I had to learn in high school, it was Me llamo Paco. I call myself Paco. I am called Paco. And so you talk about calling, and that's what gives you a name. In Hebrew, starting right here in the Torah, on the first day, God called out to the light, Yom. And guess what? Now the light is called Yom. It's called Yom. That's what it means. So Yom is day. God called the light Yom. And, we come over, All right, here we are. Called the light Yom. That's a good word. Yom is a much better word than day, and you'll see why I say that in a second. And then it says, la choshech, and to the darkness, kara, he called Lila. Say Lila. Lila. So God called the light, the or, Yom, and God called the darkness Lila. So I want to tell you a few things. First of all, what is day? Something about the light. What is night? Something about the darkness, Lila. And the way we say day is Yom, and the way we say night is Lila. And I want you to imagine a little teeny baby who can't say any words yet, but can make sounds come out. And would they be more likely to have the sound night come out of their mouth or the sound Lila come out of their mouth? Lila. The words Yom, exactly. The words Yom and Lila are suckling sounds. Every infant child, no matter where they are in the world, even if they grow up speaking one of those clicky languages in the bush, wherever they are, the first kinds of sounds that they can make are the suckling sounds, ma, la, la, la. When God created the world and God was naming this baby, the names that God gave were increasingly more sophisticated in the exact same way that any human child would have had their language develop. So day one, we have suckling sounds. We have a baby. We have yum, and we have lila. And he says, so it says, and God called the darkness, called the light Yom, and the darkness God called light. And then it says something that we sing about. Watch this. And that's really cool. I don't know why it's doing that. It didn't used to do that before. Vayihi erev, vayihi voker. So it says, vayihi erev, and it was evening, erev. Vayihi voker, and it was morning. And then it says this last word, yom. And then we have to go to the beginning of the line to get to the last word, echad. There was evening and there was morning, yom echad, one day, or day one, but yom, one day. There was evening and there was morning one day. So what's a day? I know two things about days right now. I know it has to do with the light, and it has to do with evening comes and then morning comes, and that is what defines a day. So why do all Jewish holidays start in the evening? Because that's how God defined a day. The day starts as soon as the sun goes down. When the evening starts, although this is before there were suns, there was a sun. There wasn't a sun. It was just light and darkness. But God tells me that in order for it to be a yom, one day has to have evening and morning, and then I've got a day. So that's a kind of a concept that I think about a lot. There's something, that's not how we're taught to make days. We're taught that the day starts like when the sun comes up in the morning, you wake up and you start a new day. Or we're taught that there's midnight, and that's the beginning of a new day. But Torah, God teaches us that there's evening, and then it gets dark out, and I got nothing better to do. Hopefully I finished dinner before it got too dark out, because now I have no more light. And I go to sleep at the very beginning of my day. I go to sleep. I sleep all night. I wake up. That's the middle of my day. I do my work. I have my dinner. I get ready for resting again, because that's the end of my day. And then my day begins with resting, darkness. It sounds strange, except in the next class, in the Basic Judaism class, we're going to talk about the New Year. And one of our New Years, the primary one that we call the New Year, the Jewish New Year, when our calendar year changes, it comes in the fall. And certainly in New York, a little bit less so in Shreveport, but in New York, the fall meant it was getting cold, and you wanted to shut things down, and then you get to the winter. And so why is it that the year starts as you're kind of hunkering down? And then in the middle of the year, the things start to bloom, and then you've got the summertime, and then you get ready again, and a new year starts. I feel like the cycle of the year that starts on Rosh Hashanah in the fall is kind of, in some sense, the evening of the year. So whatever it is that God wants us to get by the fact that the day starts in the evening, I think that's the same kind of a concept that we're getting by saying that our new year starts in the fall. And we'll find out soon that that's not the only time that a new year starts, just like it's not the only time that a day starts, because God just told us that the day was the light time, that was light. But I like the fact that God defined what a day is by saying evening and night, and evening, vayhi erev, vayhi voker, and there was morning. Does that help? Did that answer something what you said or no? You're asking about.
No, I was just looking at the whole 7-day concept.
So here's a cool thing.
Written down in that a day to God was not really long for
We have
I mean, like
we have no idea how long this day was.
1,000 years.
We have no idea how long a day was. We have absolutely no idea. And it's 6 days before we were created, so we have no idea. And we may never be able to get a concept of how long that is. I was once taught that in order for there to be time, there has to be two objects and motion. So if there's just one thing, and it doesn't matter how long that one thing is sitting there, there's no time. You can't say, well, it was there for 3 hours, because only if you see something else moving can you say, oh, well, I've been here from here until here. But if it's just sitting there like that, you cannot judge an amount of time. So right now we have Nothing. We have a light and we have a dark. And it's not that they're coming one after another. It's that they're there, that God separated them out. That's day right now. That somehow there has to be a combination of a light and a dark. That's all we know. And we have no clue. One of the cool things that happens that we don't get to do, because next week when we do our last 7 characters of the alphabet, we'll be in Exodus, we'll be in the Decalogue in Exodus. So we're not going to get to the second day of creation. But one of the things that is really interesting, that blows some people's minds because they can't even hear that. At the end of this story, at the end of this first day, it says there was evening and there was morning, and it says one day. It uses the word, stay there. It uses the word echad. Echad. Echad means one. It doesn't mean first. It means one. When we get to the end of the second day, every day in our story, when it talks about all the other things that are being created, at the end of the story, at the end of each day, it will say, Vayhi erev, there was evening. Vayhi voker, there was morning. But on the second day, it's going to say, Yom Sheni, the second day. And on the third day, it's going to say, Yom Shlishi, third day. And on the fourth day, it's going to say, Yom Revi'i. But on the first day, it doesn't say, first day. On the first day, it says, one day. I like thinking about that. Why does it say one day at the end of the first day, but at the end of the second day, it says, second day? So my theory, one theory, we've thought of a bunch, and I think there's one in the materials that I gave you, the text that's part of what's online. One theory is, if you have one child, or if you have one car, or if you have one house, and you never had one before, and you don't have another one yet, then you say, this is my house. This is my one house. You don't say, this is my first house. Or Mom likes to tell this joke about how there's someone who introduces his wife as his first wife, even though, he's not intending to be married again. That's funny, haha, not always very funny. But if you say, if I have only one child, I say, this is my child. I don't say it's my first child unless I know there are more coming or there are already more. You say it's one. And that's all there was. At the end of this day, not only is our lesson finished about day one, but there's only one day. That's all there is. So it doesn't say first day until we get to the second day. And then we can know that it was the first day, and we can understand one day as the first day, but it doesn't say first day. If you look at the translation of the Bible that you've got, most of you, I bet, will have a Bible that says first day. And it doesn't say first day. It says echad. It says the number one. With that, we're going to shut down this class, and we're going to go to the next class. Start Basic Judaism.